Chicago is about 67% more dangerous than the rest of the U.S. The Windy City is on the southwest shore of Lake Michigan. It's home to 2.6 million people. And here are the 10 worst places to live in Chicago. Keep watching to find out which one placed on the list. Starting with the number 10, Chatham, on the south side of Chicago, is a middle-class neighborhood with a high crime rate that makes it less appealing for both locals and tourists. There's a lot of substance and gang-related crime in the area, even though many homes have protection features like gates. There are 6,471 crimes for every 100,000 people, which is 178% more than the national average. At 198% above the national rate, violent crime is especially scary. There is a 1 in 16 chance of being a victim of crime. A resident shared their personal experience, saying, "Chatham has always been a stable neighborhood in the past. I think crime can happen anywhere since criminals move around looking for chances. Even the north side isn't as safe as it used to be." Located on Chicago's south side along Lake Michigan, South Shore has beautiful views and easy access to beaches, but it also has a lot of crime. With 55,000 people living there, the neighborhood has a lot of problems with serious crime. There are 7,573 crimes for every 100,000 people, which means that 1 in 13 people will become victims. There are 2,454 violent crimes for every 100,000 people. These crimes include robbery, attack, murder, and gun violence. I met a resident who shared his experience with this place. He mentioned that while it's generally safe during the day, if you're not from around there, you might get some curious looks. At first, Riverdale was just a farming village at a river bridge. It's now on the far south side of Chicago. In the 1840s and 1850s, German and Dutch people came to work as farmers and loggers. The area is now 3.7 square miles, and about 10,000 people are living there. People in Chicago think that Riverdale is one of the safest areas because it has a high crime rate compared to its population. There were 7,682 crimes for every 100,000 people. There's a 1 in 39 chance of being a victim of physical crime and a 1 in 22 chance of being a victim of property crime. I asked a resident who shared his experience with this place. He mentioned that Riverdale often gets a bad reputation, especially from people on the north side who rarely venture south of Roosevelt Road. On to next. People used to call West Englewood South Lynn. It's in the southwest part of Chicago. It used to be a swamp and oak scrub in the late 1840s, before German and Swedish homesteaders moved there. The neighborhood is now home to about 30,000 people and covers 3.15 square miles. The area has a high crime rate of 9,551 crimes per 100,000 people, which is twice as many as the average in Chicago. There are 6,778 property crimes and 2,773 violent crimes for every 100,000 people, which means that 1 in 37 people will become victims. Most common crimes include theft, attack, and burglary. Well, you shouldn't drive alone in this area at night. The next place is centrally located on the south side of Chicago, Grand Crossing, which is home to around 31,600 people and covers 3.56 square miles. It has a mix of urban and country feel, where many people rent their homes and enjoy the many parks. However, Grand Crossing has a lot of safety issues. The crime rate is much higher than the national average, and serious crimes happen 306% more often. The rate of violent crime is 16.8 per 1,000 people, and the rate of property crime is 45 per 1,000 people. Here the gun crime is a big problem, and people often say they hear gunshots at night. Overall, 5,866 property crimes happen for every 100,000 people, which means that every 18th person who lives in the area has a chance of becoming a victim. I asked a resident who shared his experience with this place. He mentioned that the south side of Chicago has a tough reputation, and if you go there, you should be cautious. On Chicago's west side, East Garfield Park is one of the city's 77 official neighborhood areas. This area is known for its ancient buildings and churches. It's 1.93 square miles and has about 20,000 people living in it. The idea of Garfield Park being the next area to be developed has been talked about for 30+ years. Whoever moves, they never last and most leave within 3 months. The area has a lot of history, but it has needed help with economic growth and crime. The crime rate is 10,195 crimes per 100,000 people, which means that every 10th person who lives there will be a victim of either a physical or property crime. I asked a resident who shared his experience. Last month, he was jolted awake by gunshots. He also mentioned that after visiting the conservatory in Garfield Park, he took a quick walk through the park and saw 3 dead geese. Just like East Side, West Garfield Park is also on the list. Along Chicago's west side, it's home to 16,400 people and covers 1.28 square miles. If you are going there to go to the conservatory, you should be fine. But don't walk down alleys, especially at night. There are 409% more crimes in this neighborhood than in the rest of the country as a whole. People who live there have an 8% chance of becoming a victim of crime, with 3,596 crimes for every 100,000 people. This high crime rate is partly caused by the fact that gangs are so common. Many people choose to live elsewhere because they don't feel safe, which makes also it one of the cheaper areas of Chicago. I asked a local. He mentioned that it's known for being a high crime area, but that's usually if you're with the wrong crowd. One of the biggest and most populated parts of Chicago is North Austin. This area is 1.4 square miles and has about 90,000 people living in it. It's known for its classic houses and places like Columbus Park and the Austin Town Hall. Even though North Austin has a lot of historical charm, it has a lot of problems with crime and poverty. The crime rate in this area is 136% higher than the national average, and the rate of serious crimes is 167% higher than the national average. People who live there have a 1 in 11 chance of being a victim of crime. I asked a local. He mentioned that people often say Austin is bad, and its crime rates are indeed higher compared to some other areas. Many people end up living in tough neighborhoods because that's what they can afford. Situated on the south side of Chicago, you won't find much to do within walking distance. Aside from the nearby park, it's famous for its 372-acre park and lively art scene. It's also the most dangerous area in Chicago, which is a shame. Though Washington Park only has 12,700 people, it has 701% more serious crimes than the rest of the country. The general crime rate here is 297% higher than the national average. The most common types of crime here are murder, robbery, and attack. With 34 crimes per 1,000 people, it's one of the worst places in the country to live. People who live here have a 1 in 30 chance of being a victim of either a physical or property crime. I asked a resident, and he said that there had been a lot of gunfire in the neighborhood recently and advised avoiding it if possible. However, if your budget is limiting your options and you need to be in Providence, it's manageable. Number 1 on my list is West Pullman. Gangs, crime, you name it, they got it. About 26,000 people live here, located on the far south side of Chicago and covering 3.58 square miles. There is a lot of crime in this historic neighborhood, known for its role in the growth of the American train industry and its history in farming and manufacturing. But now it's a high-crime area. There is 369% more crime here than the national average, and there is 749% more serious crime than the national average. There is a 1 in 8 chance of becoming a victim of crime. This shows that the neighborhood is still having trouble with crime and low-income issues. I met a resident who said that the area has a super high crime rate, but can be block by block sometimes. There you have it, a list of some of Chicago's most dangerous areas. I would say do your research and spend a little time in the neighborhoods before moving. Bear in mind that this list is based on crime data and should be used to help you feel safer as you move around the city. Always be careful and pay attention to what's going on around you, no matter where you are. You won't have any problems as long as you mind your own business.